Good morning, Dr. Wright. How are you?
I'm great, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's good to see you. There are so many things to talk about, and are you COVID-free? Everybody okay?
Yes, indeed. So far, so good. Yeah.
So far, so good. Let's jump into, first of all, the testing, because we talked about it at length, and I got so many different reports on that and feedback from saying, okay, we don't have enough information to test this year. So just send Johnny to the next grade. And also, we don't have enough information to test from the schools, so we can't give a rating to the schools. From the Department of Education, your thoughts?
Well, I think we are going to test this year, and I think it's important that we test this year because this will have been, excuse me, 2 full years that we will have not had any testing done, and we really need to get a handle on. I refer to it as the state of education in Mississippi, and we need to get some really good feedback on that. So we will test in grades 3 through 8, and again. The policies that we brought forth to the board for waivers, I also feel, and I've used this phrase many times, I just feel that this needs to be a year of grace in terms of not assigning letter grades to districts and not requiring third graders to be retained because there's so many unknowns that we have from spring of last year through this year in terms of continuity of instruction and students that were in school and then out of school and have been in and out, depending on what the numbers have been doing versus COVID. And so I think that we need to get a read on this. Right now, we don't know how many children are going to test. The federal government is still requiring not only at this point the assessments, but also regular accountability. The feds do not care really about an A through F system, but they do care about us running an accountability model. Mm-hmm. The A through F part of it is in our state statute, as is our third grade retention law is in our state statute. So what we have done is just to say we're going to waive that this year. So we're hoping, and the other part that we have not been waived, which I'm still kind of surprised at, the feds require that 95% of children be assessed. And I don't think there's going to be a state in the nation that's going to be able to come up with 95% of testing all of their children because we don't have all of our kids right now back in school. So with the unknowns that are out there, not knowing how many children are going to be tested, that's the reason we put the waivers in. But we still felt very strongly, and I still feel very strongly about testing.
I'm trying to figure this out because a lot of times the only thing that we have to go by is what we hear in the news from the press release from either your people or the way that's interpreted, and it's meted out to whether it's in the newspaper or electronic media. So we hear that there will be no testing. Now you tell me that there will be testing, but it will not count. Is basically the way it is.
That's exactly right. So there will be testing. So let me be very clear about that. We are going to assess.
So hang on. If there is testing, and we see, and I guess this is testing like the normal process of a child all the way through the year, whatever can be done. But if we find that child is way behind, and we also find that that child is failing if there were grades given, does he or she still go to the next grade?
Well, we have left that up to the locals to make a decision on that, a local decision making, and they have their own policies around retention. Every district in the state has a local policy about retention. My concern was the requirement of retention when we don't know the continuity of that. But Paul, you bring up a very good point, and that is we need to ensure that those children, if they are moved on to fourth grade, are still in fourth grade, going to get the interventions that they need and that the teachers have the support that they need in order to meet the needs of those children. So we've got a lot of professional development that's planned and also resources that we are developing for children who do move on to the next grade, whether it's fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, doesn't really make any difference, that may still be behind in not on grade level. So that's all part of what we are planning as a support to our districts.
All right. Well, what happened that has disrupted this? I mean, in most businesses are making it as much as they can. Take for instance, there could be no interruption more than in a restaurant. And they found a way to go up. They're counting their money the same way. They're doing what they have to. They're going to, within all of the rules and regulations that they're confronted with, they're doing what they have to do. Why do schools get this pass and say, look, we're paying you $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 per child, but we will not be able to test them to a point where we can count that grade? Why does the pandemic? Why do you get a pass there at schools?
I don't know that I would call it a pass. I think what we have to look at is what the reality. The reality was in spring and even into fall, there were a lot of children that had no connectivity whatsoever, like none.
Mm-hmm.
So those districts that were able to pivot to virtual because they had one-to-one initiatives in advance, that was before we put the Mississippi Connects initiative into place. They were having to do this as best they could via paper pencil and buses delivering packets or parents picking up packets or not picking up packets. I mean, there were a whole lot of variables that were out there that
Mm-hmm.
lacked the continuity of instruction. And so what we were able to do with the legislature's help was with the $200 million, we were able to purchase now a device for every child and every teacher in the state. And so that was all delivered by December the 1st, and we pivoted to virtual professional development because we knew that was the best way to do that. A lot of folks were not in place. So I think there's a lot of variables that need to be taken into consideration.
I wish we had more time, and this is going to run out before I wanted to go to run out. But so the end of this is basically the tests are being given. Were any of these tests done on virtual also before they got back in class?
No. Right now we do not have the ability to administer virtually.
So for the few tests that you were able to give, those tests will count as far as the decision by the local authorities, the local school boards, the local school districts, to make that determination whether the child has passed or failed, one way or the other. But the parents,
absolutely,
they won't be getting a grade? Will the parents get the grade?
We are going to be producing individual reports for every child that gets tested, just as we've done in the past. There will be an individual report that will be given to the teacher and to the parent. So any child that is in school and is tested will receive an individual report to let them know how well that they did. So that administration of that test is going to happen to everybody that's in school.
And the same, I guess the same applies as far as the needs to do this, to the schools not being graded?
Well, it's hard to assign a grade when you don't even know how many children you're testing. And I think that's the part of it. I mean, and I used this example before. Let's say you've got 100 third graders, but you only test 50. I mean, that really doesn't give you a sense of what's happening in the school at all. And so what we're hoping is that parents will return their children to school to be tested so that we can really get an idea of what their needs are. And that's really the purpose of it. And those results, Paul, just so you know, will be published as well.
The schools in our state are about to see a large influx of federal dollars from a second federal coronavirus relief bill passed in December. The second wave of funding allocated for Mississippi is nearly 3 times the amount the state received last year from the virus and from the CARES Act. We're looking at a lot of money. How's it going to be used? Can you hang around for a second? We'll talk about that.
Sure.
We'll do it next with Dr. Wright, because there's not a lot of time in this segment. Schools about to receive a lot of money on the CARES Act. Well, we got a lot. A total of $54 billion for K through 12 schools across the nation. $23 billion goes to post-secondary institutions. Governors receive $4.1 billion. The remainder will go to the Bureau of Indian Education. Mississippi will receive about, it says here, $1 billion from the federal government. Is the check in the mail?
Yes, it is. K-12 gets about $720 million of that money, and we'll be notifying the districts actually this week. We are hoping to make that money available to them probably within the next 2 weeks, but they'll be notified by next week of the exact amount that each one gets. Each district, the formula that's used is the same way the formula was used the last time. It's really based on Title I, the way the Title I dollars are distributed.
And how much did we get last time through the CARES Act?
Oh, we got about 170 million. It was a lot less than the 720. Actually,
Yeah.
it's almost over four times the amount of money that was received last time. And there's more flexibility with this money. Districts can use this money for any kind of repairs to buildings that may be needed, HVAC systems that may need to be repaired to prepare for COVID, and as well as all kinds of instructional uses. In fact, the department is right now preparing a guidance document to go out to districts for them to be thinking about, like digital curriculum to load onto devices, et cetera.
Has all that money been allocated as far as the first one on the CARES? Is all that gone?
Oh yes, that money's been out. That money was out probably within 30 days of when it was allocated. So districts have already had that money to spend, and this will be additional money on top of that money that they will have to spend.
Any of this hiring you can hire teachers with?
Well, the sad thing about it is it would only be short term because these monies expire September 30, 2023. So if you did something like that contractually, you're not going to be able to sustain it. So we're not encouraging you to use this money for anything that cannot be sustained once this money goes away.
Who does Dr. Wright, Carey Wright? Who does the checks and balances on this? Is this left up to maybe the auditor's offices of their problems? But is the Department of Education?
It's both, because what we have to do is to verify the allowable expenses, and the auditor's office, I have no doubt, is going to come back in and double check behind that as well, no doubt.
But you said the checks are on the way, and they'll be getting that money pretty soon.
Absolutely.
Some of the schools are offering this. Another story out there, and of course we have the C Spire guys on here talking about this as far as the need to go on and kick us up as far as teaching more, as far as computers are concerned. One story here on the AP Mississippi schools that don't already offer computer science courses will be required to start phasing them in under a bill advancing at the Capitol. It's Senate Bill 2678. It's called the Mississippi Computer Science and Cyber Education Equality Act. It did pass the Senate Education Committee yesterday, and it will go to the full Senate for more discussion. So your thoughts on that?
Oh, we're very supportive of computer science. We have been implementing computer science now for the past several years. In fact, our goal was by 2022, I believe, we will have computer science K-12. So we've developed additional computer science classes, very supportive of computer science. In fact, there's going to be a news release coming out today that 6 of our schools were recognized for actually the female participation in computer science. So 6 of our high schools get national recognition.
That's very good.
Absolutely.
I would think with the influx of $1 billion from Mississippi schools, and with the knowledge that we need to get ahead of this as far as computer science is concerned, I would think if there's any time to allocate some of that money for computer science, now's the time.
Well, that's part of what we're going to be providing in guidance to the districts. As you know, it's a local decision that's made about what gets purchased, but we felt it was very important to get out front of that and say, here's some things you really need to be thinking about as you're thinking about this amount of money.
Now, I'm sure nobody's going to say, boy, an AstroTurf field on the football field would be good to use for this money. Could they do it that way? Could they use it for a little AstroTurf on the football field? They couldn't do that. That's not education.
No. This has got to be something that is due to an impact of COVID. Absolutely.
Before we run out of time here, how do we look as far as the manipulating around the COVID breakouts here and there? We still been doing pretty good?
We really have. The districts have really been very sensitive about that. And as you know, CDC has just put out some new guidance about returning more children in person in a safe way. So our superintendents are looking at that very carefully. And I think a lot of them are trying to do just that thing, get more kids back in school face-to-face.
I hear more headway, and I wish we had more time. We'll talk about this one when we get you back in the studio at a later date. But I hear more and more talk about the 12-month going to a 12-month through the legislature.
Absolutely.
A lot of buzz going on about that, so we'll see exactly how far that makes it in the 2021 session. Look, always good to see you. Quickly, go.
Quickly, I was going to say that is a very good use of their money. Is if they decide to go to year round, it's going to cost them more money for the intercession for teachers. A great way to use that money